Hello, beautiful boss babes. Are you ready to chase life with Kelly? Well, I'm your host, Kelly Chase, and I'm so excited you're here. We are going to talk about all things love, dating, relationships, money mindset. We're going to dive deep into self-love, worthiness. I am going to bring on some incredibly empowering guests. We're going to have fun, we're going to laugh, and perhaps we're even going to shed some tears together. I am here to empower you, inspire you, and motivate you to create the life you crave. I am so excited for today's episode. Let's dive in. Hi, babes. Welcome back to the Chase Life with Kelly podcast. I am your host, Kelly Chase. I have such a beautiful ray of sunshine on the show with us today. Yeah, I have been following her on social media for a while, and I'm like, I get emotional. It touches me. that was a tear. That was like a pit in my throat coming up. Yeah, but so her name is Najwa Zebian. She is a Lebanese Canadian activist, author, poet, educator, and motivational speaker. I don't know why I'm getting so choked up.
We're going to have a great conversation then.
We are. She has become an inspiration to millions, including myself. And she is just, drawing on her own experiences of displacement, discrimination, and abuse. Najwa uses her words to encourage others to build a home within themselves, to live, love, and create fearlessly. You'll know I cry on my podcast, so there we go. Najwa, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And I've never had somebody cry reading my bio, but that really touched me. Seriously, that really touched my heart. So I'm like, we're going to have such a great conversation because I can already tell, this is our first time having a conversation, but I can already tell what moves you and what means something to you. So this is going to be a great conversation.
It is. It definitely is. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I know that
of course
we have been trying to connect and have her on the podcast, but it's just so funny because sometimes her and I have been following each other too, but you never know, if someone's interested in having a conversation with you or not. And we've just been follow each other's stories or like each other's posts every once in a while. And it's, you just never know. So I just had to reach out to her and be like, would you be interested in being on my show? So I was so happy that you're like, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I've followed also your journey. I remember when we first started following each other, I had watched Love is Blind.
Yeah.
And I just remembered you. And then since then, every time it pops up, you're one of the first people I think of. And I know that's obviously been a big part of your journey into this world, into reaching the people that you reach. And so it's just very interesting to me to see how you've evolved from then till now. Because now it's 4 seasons in?
Yeah.
So it's been a few years, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's wild. It's so funny because I was actually, before we started talking, I was writing out content ideas, and I recognize for myself that, and I had a conversation with a coach the other day, and she was like, I told her that I feel like I really haven't shown my full, shown all of me on social media. And although I can be very vulnerable and I'm very transparent and I do show parts of that, but a lot of my story, I have gotten a bit disconnected from, and that's where my superpower is. I mean, that's where all of our superpowers are, it's in that depth and that vulnerability in our storytelling. And so she, I told her, I said there was a situation back right after Love is Blind aired. And, it's first of all, from the show, I got, some hateful messages and things like that. So what was once a safe space for me, because I've been using Instagram for 10 years, what was once a safe space for me I put up like a guard around.
Yeah.
And so I was like tiptoeing around content, not sure. I didn't really lean into other platforms, you know, TikTok or YouTube back in the day, even when the show first aired, because I was just so busy with other things. I was like, I can't show up on another platform. That's just exhausting me. But over the last, you know, probably 6 months, I've been creating more content over on TikTok because it feels safe over there for me, for whatever.
Yeah, definitely more safe. Yeah. I mean, I really like how you've been talking more openly about like just how people react to you posting stuff. Like I saw one TikTok that you posted recently where it's like people saying things like, you know, every time there's a new season or something, she pops up to remind us that she was on Love is Blind or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know people reacted in that way, but you made it into a joke. And it was like the comments were, most of them were super supportive. And I'm like, yeah, well, that is part of your journey. So many times I find, I mean, I get similar feedback too with poetry I've written in the past about heartbreak, which right now I would never write something like that. But, you know, I did go through a period of my life where I'm like, you know, I'm a lot more mature and a lot more wise, and I wouldn't write about heartbreak and loss the way that I did back then. So there was a part of me that wanted to forget about that part of my life and forget about those writings. And then I was like, no, like that was part of my journey. And I actually, if I didn't go through that, and if I didn't write those writings in the way that I did, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have evolved into this much more mature, much more wise person. So now I'm like, no, I will open one of my books and read a poem, and I know it's going to reach somebody who's going through that. So it's so powerful to be able to own every single part of your journey and talk about it and recall it. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like, if you don't like someone's content, just scroll. You don't have to sit there and leave a comment saying like, why are you still here reminding us that you were on that show? Why are you having that kind of reaction? Why are you actually doing something to bring someone down? Like, it's like people don't want you to hold the space that you already own, that you already have. So like sometimes their judgments, their opinions can hold us hostage and put us in a place where it's like, oh, I want to hide that part of me. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to just put it in the past. But it's like, as long as you do that because of the judgments you're getting, then you're being ruled by other people. So if there's still something for you to say about it, then say it. Like, I mean, it's a show where you get, probably compared to the amount of airtime you thought you had, you got minimal airtime. So you were portrayed in a certain way. And obviously you have a lot to say. And because you've been through the process, there is more that you probably want to say as you're going along, right? So same thing with me, with my writings. Like sometimes I get asked about something I wrote in my first or second book. And, you know, I'm in a way, I forced myself to go back into the state I was in back then to relate to the person talking to me, because that is what life is about. It's to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and not just say, well, you know, I've been through that. I'm just, you know, I've moved on. And it's healthy to do that at some point. But if you're only doing it because you think that you're speaking way too much about it, you're being way too much, then you're being ruled by other people's opinions, and you don't want that for yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, a part of me too, it's like I said, I feel like I've been disconnected from my writing, and people prior to Love is Blind coming out, you know, even my like best friends who have kids and stuff, they're like, Kelly, you write these like mini blogs, you know, as your caption. And we have toddlers. We can't sit and read it. And I'm like, well, you're not my audience, technically. Yeah. I'm talking to like the single girls out there who are sitting on their couch, scrolling and reading every caption over and over and over again, because They have nothing better to do.
Because, well, they relate to you, right? Like they're at the point in their life where they want to hear from someone like you who's at that point in their life. There's nothing more powerful than, again, being able to put yourself in that person's shoes. And so when somebody sees you write a caption about being at this age, being single, not having kids, not being married, it's like, that's what you have connected through and over. So, you know, if somebody wants to read something else, then they should go find something else instead of trying to push you to be at a stage in your life that you're not at yet. So in a way, they have to go out there and find other content, and you have to become even more proud of the content that you put out there and more confident in it, because at the end of the day, it is reaching the right people.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think a lot of it too, you know, I'm in the process of writing a book, and I'm like,
nice.
Okay, well, I want my content to reflect my book, you know, like what I'm writing about. And a lot of it is going to be about the journey from Love is Blind.
For sure.
Because it is a part of my journey, but it was the catalyst to my greater healing. And, you know, from trauma and people pleasing and every other thing under the sun, you know, rejection wounds and things like that. And so it's like, you know, yeah, of course it stings when I see someone comment like, you need to move on, or, you know, are you still talking about this? I'm like, yeah, actually I am.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Like, you're the one who went through it. You're not commenting on someone else's life. You are talking about your own. There's the difference there. So you will know when you're done talking about it. Just same thing with me. Like just when I think, oh my, like I just wrote this entire book. Like when I wrote Welcome Home, I wrote like 85,000 words, and I was like, I don't think I'll be able to write anything else after this. Like I'm done, you know? And new things happen in life. Also, old things present themselves in a different way, because now you've matured differently. You have a different perspective on life. And I wrote a whole guide after that on ways to trust your heart. And I incorporated ways to build a home within yourself that reflect back on Welcome Home. And I wrote a whole new book that's coming out next year. And I wrote an audiobook. Like you can't keep telling yourself, like, I am only allowed to write about my story one time and in one way. And that's it. When it's done, it's done. It's like, no, some people reflect back on something that happened with them when they're 60 years old. They're reflecting like 20, 30, 40 years saying, wow, like at the time, this is what I thought, but now I see it differently. Like you're always going to have that story or those multiple stories that you've gone through, and you're going to have a different perspective. You're going to have a different take. You're going to have a different emotional reaction. You're going to have a different lesson you're learning from it. Like when we're talking about trauma, I can't even begin to tell you how my perspective on healing from trauma has, like in the last 3-4 years, has absolutely been revolutionized. I recently put out a video on TikTok talking about how one of the biggest lessons I learned in therapy is that you need to stop logicking your way through pain. And I think that video went viral, you know, and I knew it when I put it out there, because I'm like, this changed my life. It's going to change your life. I just knew it. And so, you know, before, when I first started learning about trauma and going back to all the traumas I went through over the years since I was a child to my adult years, I thought if I could make sense of why I reacted the way I reacted and why it is that I'm still carrying these traumatic responses, why it is that I'm still falling into people pleasing and fawning and freezing and all that stuff. I thought if I could understand why I am the way that I am and could make that connection to those events that happened that elicited a traumatic response, that would be enough. Like I could make sense of it. Oh yeah, like, you know, practical example. If somebody walks into the room without me being aware that they're walking into the room, my reaction, if I have something in my hand, I will literally like drop it.
Right.
Like that's my reaction. I'm very quickly shocked and taken aback. And I learned that it's because I'm always on edge. I'm always anticipating danger. Why? Because of certain things that happened earlier in life that taught me to constantly anticipate danger. Yeah. And so I thought once I knew that would be enough. But to this day, when somebody walks into the room unannounced and I'm not aware of them, I will still have that kind of reaction. Why? Because I didn't allow my body to understand what it went through and why it continues to respond in the way that it responds. And instead of tuning into my body and how it feels when I have that kind of reaction, I would just be like, it's over. Like, I recognize this person. I never took the additional steps to be like, why is it that I'm still reacting in this way? That's like one simple example of how my understanding of how to heal from your traumas changed from making sense of them and understanding them on a logical level to, oh, I actually need to let my body feel through those responses and ask it, like, what do you need right now? So after I'm shaken, what do you need right now, Najwa? And sometimes I just need to like hug myself and say, you're okay, you're safe. Like, there's no danger here. You're anticipating danger because when you were younger, there was actual danger.
Right.
Or when you went through that experience in your adult years, there was danger. But now there isn't anymore. So like to become that soother for yourself, that protector for yourself. And so again, if I had stopped talking about healing from trauma just when I talked about it that first time, or when I really went into it in Welcome Home, I wouldn't be able to share this new perspective on it. So you're growing over time, you're learning new things, and you are changing as a person. You have the right to go back to one specific moment and talk about it at different times, through different lenses, through different knowledge, through different experience. That's how you grow as a human. And you will know, as I mentioned before, when it's time to just move forward from it and say, okay, now I'm going to focus on other moments in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful. And okay, so as far as the body work, more or less, that you're doing, when you said it's been over the last like 3 or 4 years, was there something like, did you have an experience with a therapist or a coach or something to help you have that knowledge to know to listen to your actual body?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I do a lot of reading. Like I read. It's funny, people think I read a lot of fiction. I actually read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of books on psychology, and I love reading poetry. Yes, I love reading just anything that soothes the soul, anything that makes me feel heard and seen. But I also love understanding how people work, how people think, how people feel, how people heal. I love listening to interviews by people who do that kind of work, like Gabor Mate. I love his work, like Brene Brown, like the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicole LePera. I think that's how you say her name. Nadra Tawwab. Like I love listening to them and reading their work because I learned so much. And so the thing that pushed me to really want to understand why it is that I know so much, but I have a hard time applying, is seeing that disconnect. And I was judging myself for knowing better, but not doing better. So I was looking at myself as weak, like, come on, you know better. Why aren't you doing better? Why are you still falling into old patterns of people pleasing and not being able to stand up for yourself and not being able to assert yourself? And why are you still being controlled by your fear of abandonment when you've dissected it all? Like, you understand where it started in your childhood. You understand that no one leaving you is as powerful as you leaving yourself. Like, why is it that you know all these things, but you're not applying them? So I was judging myself like constantly, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was just in that place of like, it was a constant negative feedback loop of judging myself and then further falling into all those behaviors because I was already judging myself and not having any expectations to do better. And so I reached out to a therapist. This would have been at like 3 a.m. one morning because I couldn't sleep, and I just searched and I wanted somebody to help with trauma healing. And I reached out to her and I explained to her what was going on. And she said to me, well, you do know that it's not just your mind that chooses for you. Your body also chooses for you. Like your body has a choice. And I was like, oh, so like, it's not that I don't want to do better. It's that I don't have the tools to do better. My body doesn't feel equipped with the right tools. And so like, that was honestly, I wrote about it in the book that's coming out next year, but in more detail, but I wrote about it in the way that really changed things for me is, and I'm making this motion with my hands because I learned about the trauma vortex and how like your traumatic wounds and your survival in a way are intertwined. And so you think, if I don't continue responding in the ways I've always responded, let's say it's people pleasing, then my survival is threatened. And so what you need to do is disconnect those two and do the work. And so how do you do the work? You actually tune into your body. It's not just about knowing it. So for example, when you do fall into a people pleasing response, tune into your body, how it feels right before you're about to say something that is people pleasing. Usually when we think of people pleasing, we think, oh, it's just doing things for other people, but it's not just that. It's also, if let's say there's something you don't eat and that's all they're offering, and you don't speak up and say, well, actually, like, I don't eat this. And you don't say anything, like you kind of just want to not be a burden on anybody, right? Something like that, for example. You tune into your body and how it feels. Like, are you feeling tension in certain areas? Are you feeling like you just want to run away? Are you feeling like, I don't know, a throbbing pain somewhere in your body? Your body knows. Every person is going to feel something different. For me, my biggest pains would show up in my arms and in my back. And so for me, it was always like the wanting to fight, obviously not physically, but the wanting to like break through something, but always being stuck at like wanting to do it, but not actually doing it. And so instead of getting stuck in that trauma response and not allowing it to actually complete itself, you do the motions with your body to actually complete that response. And so now your body knows, oh, she's listening to me and she knows how to break out of this dead end that we're reaching every single time, where, we want to fight, but we're too scared because we think if we do fight, then we're going to be in trouble, or we are going to be left behind. We're going to be judged. We're going to be abandoned. We're going to be looked at as not a good person, whatever that fear is. And so you keep it in your body. And so again, it's not about like physically fighting someone. It's about doing those motions with your body on your own to tell your body, like, I'm here and I'm with you. I'm not, because usually what happens, and you can probably relate to this, is when you are in that space where you are feeling like I want to, but I can't stand up for myself because like my knees start shaking, or I would rather die than tell somebody no, or then tell somebody, I actually have a different preference, or whatever it is. And so when you feel that way, you feel like you left yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're not there, because an hour later you can think back to it and say, oh, like I wish I did this. I wish I did that. I feel the power now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, that's because now you're back with yourself. But back in that moment, as a survival mechanism, whatever your survival mode was, you've been trained to leave your body in moments like that and just get through it so that you're safe.
Yeah.
And I always talk about this, like when we talk about safety, that's another really like mind-blowing lesson that I learned is when we want to be safe in moments where it's like what we just talked about, where you just want it to go by and just be gone. That kind of safety is very protective. Like I want to hide for the people who are watching this on YouTube. Like, I just want to get through this. Like that's that kind of safety. But the kind of safety we need to be seeking as humans is the safety where it's like we are safe fully being ourselves and we're not afraid to show every part of us, the good, whatever we considered bad, like not even labeling those things, but just being ourselves fully and authentically and being vulnerable with the person that we're with. That's the kind of safety that we need to be going for, because many people and the thing is, many people don't even know that they've had these trapped trauma responses inside their body that need to be tuned into and released somehow through doing that body work, through breath work, through certain movements. Like if you look up somatic healing, you'll find quite a few strategies. So for me, I always fall into either fawn or freeze. So either people pleasing or I just completely shut down. I feel like I'm sinking into the couch. It feels like I'm 1,000 pounds and I can't get up. Like that's the kind of response I normally fall into. And so there's a lot of exercises. If you look up specific somatic healing exercises, they will tell you where to put your arms and what to do with your legs and what to do with your breathing. And it actually seriously helps so much. But I don't remember what I was saying earlier, but I went off on a tangent.
About safety.
Yes, the safety, exactly. So when you can teach yourself through tuning into whatever is going into your body, when you can tell yourself, I'm going to do my absolute best to not leave you, like you're saying this to yourself. I will be there in moments where you feel like your knees are shaking. I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to sit here and soothe you. There's that level of being with yourself. And that's why I wrote Trust Your Heart. That's a Scribd original for anybody who wants to read it. You can get a 60-day free trial at the first link in my bio and read it. It's Trust Your Heart, Lead Your Journey to Self-Discovery from Within. Once you have that ability to trust yourself, to trust your heart, to trust your soul, to say, it doesn't matter what I go through. I know many people might abandon me, but I will not abandon myself. I'll be there at that time, because really who I'm soothing internally is not me at this age. It's me at a younger age who went through something, who was taught from that moment to respond in this way, whether it's fawn, freeze, whatever that trauma response is. For many people, it's you want to flee the situation. You want to run away. For many people, it's, I'm thinking of the four, and I just talked about fawn, freeze, and I'm not remembering the other two because I don't normally fall into them. That's why I'm not remembering them, but I know them. So whatever your response is that you find you fall into, I'm actually going to look it up because it's really going to bother me for anybody listening so that they could.
Is it like fight or flight, fight and flight?
Fawn? Yeah, fight. Exactly. Yes. So for many people it's fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And so for me, it's mostly the fawn and the freeze. It's definitely not the fight. It's definitely not the fight. That really scares me actually too, because fighting to me is standing up for myself. It's trying to change an outcome when internally I I generally feel like if I do try to change the outcome, then I'm going to get in trouble. So I stay away from that. So that's why, to me, it's the freeze where I feel like there is nothing. That's why I get stuck here.
Yeah.
So my therapist tells me, like, do this with your arms. And my fists tells me open them and close them. Like, that's how you teach your body that it actually has the ability to go all the way and releasing those responses instead of getting so stuck. Honestly, it's been life-changing.
Yeah.
So once you are able to be there for yourself in moments like that, then through action, people also ask me a lot about self-love. How do I love myself? And I'm like, it's through action. You love yourself by giving yourself what you need in that moment. It's not just, you know, read those affirmations in the morning and read them at night and listen to, you know, things that subconsciously will change the way you think. No, you need to do it actively. Yes, the subconscious helps a lot, but you also need to do the work that's not just a subliminal kind of thing. You need to do the hard things that you need to do. You need to experience what it feels like if your biggest fear is disappointing others. You need to feel in your body what it feels like to disappoint someone. And to tell yourself, see, you didn't die.
Right.
It's not the end of the world. You survived this. Like, you need to go through that. And obviously you don't have to go through it in with the biggest force possible. Sometimes you can do that with the littlest things, and you train yourself and you gradually do more. But for anybody listening, because I struggled with this for a really long time too, is again, you judge yourself based on what you know versus what you do. You in any moment are actually doing the best that you can do with the resources that you have. Because I have many people tell me, like, no, like, I really could have done better in that moment. And I'm like, if you could have, you would have. Knowing is not enough. It's feeling that you have the supports that you need, feeling that you will be able to get through this by doing these things. Like, you trust me, you think now that experience has passed, that if you were to go back right now, you would do things differently. But you now is a very different person from who you were back then. So don't judge yourself. Like, one of the forms of abandonment, and I do talk about this in Trust Your Heart too, the forms of self-abandonment is when you continue to judge yourself, when you continue, like, that is you leaving yourself, one of your past selves. Instead of like being with them, you're abandoning them and standing above them and saying, how could you? That's a form of self-abandonment. And so it's really life-changing when you learn that one of the best ways for you to heal is to sit with that past self of yours and say, I get it. Like, this was so hard. And yeah, now we think we could have done better, but now I know this is all you think you can do and survive. Yeah.
That's so good. I was going to say I feel like I'm the same way as far as like the fawn or freeze. Their example, like about a month or so ago, I experienced something where I don't get mad very often or very easily, but I got mad, very angry. And it's like the person who I was upset with was not physically present, but I wanted to, I mean, I wrote so many text messages and like deleted.
Aww. Yeah.
So, like, I want to, or was about to call the person. Like, I wanted to express myself. I was so angry. And I was like, Kelly, just calm yourself. But, you know, it's like, since then, there was a part of me that wishes I had done that because because that's who I am. I'm not confrontational. I let things go. And I think that I was trying to I guess the logic that I was trying to persuade myself with was, okay, Kelly, if you lose your emotions on this person, you are losing your power. And therefore I did not express myself. And I
get that.
I still have not talked to this person. And I try and sit with it. I journal a lot, obviously, but there's still a part of me that's like, but you still want to have the conversation. It may not come out as aggressively as it would have that day, but you still want to have the conversation. And now I feel like I'm more, emotionally grounded and stuff. So it would come maybe from a more powerful place, because I wouldn't be screaming my head off.
Yeah.
So,
but sometimes that's how anger manifests itself. Like sometimes we think, oh, it's very aggressive, but maybe it just really hurt you that much, whatever it is that they did. Right.
Yeah.
And so I used to think, okay, so I've always been a super emotionally driven person. Always. Like I have a friend of mine who said to me recently, like, he's like, you asked me a question that like, it shocked me. Like no one asks me this question. He's like, I had told you that I got an opportunity, and instead of saying like congratulations or how did you get it or whatever, you said, how do you feel about that?
Right.
That's just the kind of person I am. Right. I'm all about, how do you feel? How are you feeling? What's going through your mind? Like I tune into people. And so I'm very emotionally driven. So at one point in my life, I started judging myself for being that way. And I started thinking, well, if I could just hide this enough and just be logical, right? Because I'm smart, I'm logical, I could be led by logic. And, there are thought leaders out there who think that you should curb your emotions and who think that emotions are weakness. And so I fell into that for a while. And then I was like, if somebody can't hold space for me expressing my emotions in a safe space, then that person doesn't belong in my life.
Right.
Like if I can't express to someone that they hurt me in a certain way, that person doesn't belong in my life. If I can't express healthy anger, and healthy anger is what you express in that moment, you don't let it sit with you for over a month, because what's going to happen is, I'm not judging you for it because I get it. Exactly. So you're holding it.
Yeah.
And really it could have been on that day, you could have just expressed, what you did made me feel this way or hurt me in this way. And, again, to you, it might feel like, oh my God, it's so aggressive, but it's like, you also said, I'm not a confrontational person. So sometimes something that's this small to a person who doesn't define themselves as I don't speak my feelings. I don't speak my mind. I just want to keep the peace. Sometimes a little thing feels like it's massive.
Right.
But then what happens when you keep it inside, because it matters that much to you, but you didn't say anything, it's just going to turn into resentment over time. And how could that person have done this? And how could they have not known any better? And it's like, if you didn't feel there, okay, you may have been like telling yourself, I judge myself for having this emotional reaction. Like maybe I just need to let it go. But also the other potential problem is that that if you express yourself, that person is either going to judge you or they're going to, try to change, the narrative or basically not give you the right to your emotions.
Right.
And I find personally from my own experience, and I don't know if this is what you went through in that situation, if I have someone in my life who I know will have a safe space for me to express my anger at them for hurting me in a certain way, I will express that anger. Yeah. But if I don't feel safe, then I'll say, past me, not me now, but I still struggle with it sometimes. Like, don't let that person see you hurt. But here's my advice to you is if you make that decision where you're like, you know what, this person has shown me time and time again that they don't deserve to see me and my emotions in those times. If that's been made very clear to you, then that could be the end of the anger expression where you say, you know what? I know how they hurt me. I know what they did. I don't need them to acknowledge it. I don't need them to apologize.
Right.
I'm also not going to continue treating them the way that I treated them before. Like that's a form of boundary setting, and it's also a form of giving yourself closure. But it's very important that to give yourself closure and to just have that radical acceptance where you're like, I know what happened. I know how it felt. I know what they did. I know like how much it hurt me. And, you know, therefore I will obviously over time, I'm going to struggle with, you know, reflecting back on this. I might feel that pain come up and bubble up. I might be triggered at certain points, but I will deal with it. Like my way of dealing with it is dealing with it internally and listening to myself, giving myself that validation, as opposed to every time I get upset at it, I think maybe I should reach out to them. Maybe I should get that closure from them. Like there's a really viral video, right, like super viral, because I think anytime anybody posts it, it goes viral. It's about not waiting for somebody to apologize to you after they've hurt you. Yeah. And I think I start by saying, do you really need the person who hurt you to come to you and say, I hurt you and I'm sorry and I feel awful about it? Like you don't need that to heal. You want that. And obviously it feels great when you get it. You know, I'm not dispelling that. I'm not saying, you know, it shouldn't mean anything to you. Of course, it makes you feel seen and heard. But that's not how our world operates. Not every person who hurts you is going to come and give you that validation. So what would you do if somebody who threw pain at you said, I'm walking away. You have to deal with this. Right. Are you going to wait for them? Like continue holding it in this place and wait for them to come and say to you, here, give me that back. Like I hurt you in this way. So I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Then that's, again, without any judgment, that is a way that you are giving your power away. Right. And for me, I don't judge people about giving their power away. I focus on them and say, like, how can you bring your power back to you? What is it that taught you to seek comfort and validation outside of you from people who have shown you that they don't deserve that kind of power in your life? That, you know, just because actually earlier today, I was on TikTok and this girl said, you mean to tell me that you messed up and because you messed up and hurt me, I have to like be left by you and I have to deal with all of this. And so there was so much pain where she's just trying to express that, like, you're the person who hurt me. You're the person who did all of this. And I'm the one who's going through the pain of betrayal, the pain of abandonment. Like, you're the one who threw all of this at me. Shouldn't you be going through something? And it's like, who cares?
Right.
You only care about your healing. Yeah. The more time you spend in trying to make sense of why someone would hurt you or why they're not going through what you think they should go through as a result, or why they're not getting their karma, or why they're not getting revenge from someone, you're spending more time on somebody who does not deserve that kind of energy from you. And they've shown you that. You take all that energy and put it back into yourself. So again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you can choose to not express that anger to that person if you don't feel like it's a safe space for you. And if you feel like it's going to put you in a position where you feel like you've let yourself down because you've spoken to this person over and over and over, and they have shown you that they are not willing to listen to you or acknowledge what they put you through or whatever, you can say, you know, I'm not going to waste my words anymore, but I'm not going to continue giving that person access into my life the way that I did before. And you give yourself that closure. End of story. Now you're not carrying this anger around, waiting for the right moment where you just say it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of what I've been conflicted with, talking with other friends and stuff. And, some are like, oh, you should call them up and, speak your piece. And on the other hand, there's other friends that are like, Kel, like you not saying anything is you in your power. And what you just said about like just changing the scenario, it's like, okay, when and if we have a conversation ever again, how I show up will be different. And that's like what my friend was saying. She was like, that is you in your power. And not because you're bypassing or whatever. It's just like, you're not giving that person the access to you that they once had. And that's it. Like, and I was like,
yeah, it's changed behavior towards them. Right. And again, if this was somebody who belonged in your life, you wouldn't be so conflicted and thinking of what does keeping my power mean? What does giving my power away mean? Again, it's that safety. Yeah. Are you going for the safety that's protective, where I want to maintain my confidence and my strength and my whatever and not let anybody see me sweat? Or is it the kind of safety that's like, wow, I can open up to you and I can tell you like what you said right there, what you did right there really hurt me. Mm-hmm. What kind of safety are you going for? And, you have to reevaluate having people in your life who you always have to be protecting yourself around, or you always have to be showing that you are powerful. Because really the people who are going to be there in the long run that you ultimately want to spend more time with are the people who are going to see you in your weak moments. They're going to see you when you're feeling powerless. They're going to see you when you're crying. They're going to see you when you're at your worst. And they're not going to be like, oh, wow, like she goes through that. I'm not going to love her anymore or be there for her anymore. Right. Like the right people for you don't put you in a position where you feel like I've lost my power by expressing myself to them,
Right. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. That's so very, very true. Yeah. I think, it's, like I said, I feel like I'm not conflicted in a bad way. I'm just like, okay, like I could do this and it could go this way, or I could do this. I think me expressing myself, like that part of the equation, I feel like there's a part of me that's not yet ready to do that, because I feel like maybe I will get lost in the emotions and then I feel like I'll like abandon myself again. And then I'll just like kind of start this cycle up again. And I'm like, no, I really want to do things different. And what you were saying too about the kind of like changing things up. I've only read a portion of this book, but The Body Keeps Score. And I mean, within the first chapter, first few pages, they were talking about that, like basically how, like war veterans, they're hearing explosions and things like this. And although they don't want to be in that scenario anymore, it's like their body is craving those types of experiences. Obviously not here, but like loud noises, like it almost brings comfort to the body, or a fight or something like that. It brings comfort actually to the body because that's what it's learned to know. And so it feels comfortable in those scenarios, although that's not like what they logically want. So if that's like what our bodies, what you were saying, like about the somatic healing, like really understanding what your body could be doing instead of doing that, like freeze or fawn or flight or anything of that sort, as you were saying, like going through the motions still of what you should be doing, quote unquote. Like, yeah, it's to break that that comfortable, to be, I guess, to get uncomfortable. They say it's like we need to be uncomfortable in order to break that safety, but it's not a safety that's helping us. It's a safety that's actually working against us.
Yeah. Yes. Like we always, in a way, like in Welcome Home, I wrote about how we try to change one ending in our lives. Like it could be the ending of a relationship. It could be the ending of a career. It could be the ending of whatever. We try to change that outcome to change the big ending that we believe we will always get to. So if I have a fear of abandonment and I think that everybody eventually walks away, and I'm in a relationship that's ending, I might try to reverse that relationship ending so that I could say, see, someone will stay, like to change that big belief that I have about myself, instead of going to that big belief and changing it. And then all the other experiences in my life will change. So many times we try to seek subconsciously experiences that will prove to us that big belief we already have about ourselves. And then we try to change those experiences to change that belief. Like it's a very twisted thing where, like they'll tell you will be attracted to people who will have the same kinds of behaviors that one of your parents had.
Right.
You subconsciously are attracted to them, and then you try so hard to change them, but really you're trying to change the dynamic you had with that one parent.
Right.
And it's like, if you're not aware of that, then you can be stuck with that for life, where you're going from one relationship to the next, seeking the same kind of partner in a different body.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's something about the struggle and the suffering that makes us feel, and the hit of dopamine that we get when the danger is gone, the danger of whatever that fear is, that whatever the trigger is with that partner, it goes away and you're like, see, like things are good. And then it happens again, and see, things are good. And it's like, you're not feeling good because you're constantly at peace. You're feeling good because things get bad and then they get better.
Yeah.
But it's like, maybe they're bad and better, but it's going downhill in general. But you think because the danger goes away after things are bad, that feels good. But that state doesn't necessarily feel good. It's the absence of the pain.
Right.
And so, when you look at it that way, you're like, yeah, like that's why, like I reflected a lot on why it is that I continue to achieve things. Like one time I was at my brother's house, 3-4 years ago, I don't remember. And I was like really sad and down and depressed. And my brother is 12 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm at a point in my life where like I haven't accomplished anything. And he looks at me and he's like, you're not even 30. You've written 4 books. You're in school. You're going to become a doctor, like not a medical doctor, but a doctor in education. You have a contract with teaching, but you don't even teach because you've made a career for yourself in writing. You are constantly like seeking different opportunities. You've stood on so many stages and given speeches. You've done so many brand deals, blah, blah, blah. He was listing all those things. And he's like, and you're telling me you feel like you haven't accomplished anything? He's like, I look at you and I'm like, you've done more in your life than I have done in my life. But it's like, again, you get that hit by achieving something, and then you achieved it and you're like, okay, what's the next thing?
Totally.
It's because you have that belief about yourself that you are what you do. And so you think, if I'm not doing, then I'm not anything. So again, you have to look at the big beliefs you have about yourself and work on changing them. Yeah. Like from the root, not just numbing them or saying, I'll deal with it today. Like you have to go back to why it is that belief exists in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so funny you said that, because literally this morning, I don't listen to my podcast. Like I personally don't, like not on a regular basis. Like I'll listen to it every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I was listening to, I mean, obviously I'm subscribed to my podcast, but I was listening to a friend of mine's podcast, and mine came up right afterwards. And so it just like went into my episode.
Yeah.
And I started listening and I was like, Kelly, you have a podcast that like, hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people listen to it. Like, good job.
Yeah.
Because I don't, as you just said, it's like, we have that dopamine hit. Oh, I launched the podcast. Okay. And what's next? I was on a magazine cover. Okay, great. What's next? It's like, that stuff does come up, and you're so right. I mean, just sitting with that. And I know that was something that came up during one of my coaching calls with a healer last year. I was talking about the fact, just that, kind of like I have felt just very, I don't know, maybe like unacknowledged in the public eye, which sounds crazy, but that's just the way my mind went. I was like, my engagement isn't that great. And I've never been like a metrics person and I've never looked at that stuff, but I am now. And, as an influencer, it's like, you kind of have to look at the engagement stuff, but like, is it my content? It doesn't suck. Like if people just like not resonating, whatever. And so she was going back with me and she goes, do you like, between you and your sister, was it very competitive growing up? And I was like, no, it wasn't. It really wasn't. And she goes, well, how were you like celebrated or acknowledged? And I said, well, I guess when I did good things, obviously, I said, yeah. But I was, I played sports. I was homecoming court. I was prom queen. I had a lead in theater. Like there were certain like things that made me much of a focal point and the center of attention and things like that. And so she was like, so you're tying your worthiness to when I do this, I am seen. Or if I do this, I am seen. People know who I am when I do things, basically. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. She goes, you're worthy because you're born, like you have to like, what is the story around that? And I mean, my story, the only thing I remember really is when I was 4, I was in preschool and this little girl said I couldn't play with her and the other girls. And that was like the first time that I was rejected and the first time that I wasn't accepted, granted I was only 4. How many friends before then did I have? Not very many, but I was just like, what? Like that was so wild to me. And I don't remember this part of the story, but my mom obviously she remembers it like it was yesterday too, but she goes, I just remember picking you up and you were crying. Like, I was asking how your day was and everything. And you were like, so-and-so said I couldn't play with the rest of the girls. And she goes, Kelly, you literally stated in the car that day, I will never not have any friends. She goes, and by golly, you have never not had any friends.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And not to say like any are inauthentic or anything like that, but I recognized, from there and then like dating and stuff like that, there was so much people pleasing that popped up. And I'm sure that didn't just come from that one incident. I'm sure there was parent conversations and experiences that happened that made me want to people please. And obviously, like I said, I was
absolutely
acknowledged and or celebrated when, oh, you got, straight A's or you got an A on your test. It's like, we're so acknowledged and celebrated for all of those things. And then not obviously
you forget that like, oh, I'll be okay if I don't achieve something that I'm celebrated for because I can just be.
Right.
No, that's so hard to get to because like even talking about social media and metrics and stuff, I don't think I've ever posted less in my entire existence on Instagram since I started, publishing my writings and stuff. But lately, like the past few weeks and gradually over the last few months, I would say I've posted less and less. And obviously there's always the pressure of like, I need to keep my work out there and whatever. And I was telling a friend of mine recently, like I have access to my book sales. I can see all of that. And obviously when I post more content, my books sell more. It's natural, right? More people get exposed. And so I was telling a friend of mine, like, I think I went at one point for like a couple of weeks without posting anything and like sales update weekly. And I didn't look even at the sales. And then at one point I looked and the sales were steady. And I was like, this is like the universe telling me you don't have to constantly work so hard to keep control of the outcome. Like things will take care of themselves as long as you take care of yourself. And there is an element of like, I think if I do more than I can control being seen a certain way or feeling a certain way about myself or accomplishing enough so that I'm celebrated in a certain way. But sometimes you just have to let go of that control and let the world prove to you that things work out and you can just be yourself and not constantly need to be seen by others in a way, because then that opens the door for you to see yourself and what's going on internally. But in this social media world, like, it is hard for us to see ourselves without feeling like others see us, or that they think we have value, or, and you know, people can be mean. That's how we started this whole interview. People can be mean. They can say, oh, you're still stuck on this, like you're still talking about this, like and it's like, okay, just scroll, like go somewhere else and look at other content. You don't need to have like, so you're still stuck on like finding people and writing comments like this. Just move on with your life, move on with your day. So it's hard to be in that place where, yes, a lot of your, you know, some people depend, their income all comes from social media. So it's really hard to strike that balance where you're like, well, I just want to continue just being myself and being authentic, when the people who are following you are saying, but we don't want you to be this way.
Right.
It's hard to strike that balance. But for me, I've just always focused on the people who come to my work and genuinely feel seen and heard by it, and genuinely feel like they want to continuously come back. Like, people who leave comments, they come and go, but the people who have been there from the start, or people who are new to my writings, who are like, you know, I really love this book and I'm going to read all your other books, and they continuously send me messages and leave comments on every post that I make. I'm like, you know, it's, you have to think of who you're actually serving, who you're actually allowing to feel like you're sitting with them in their pain. That should be the audience you have in your mind, not the critics, because
right,
let them try to do what you're doing. And, you know, who knows what they're going through? Maybe that's their way of feeling better. Maybe that's one of their trauma responses, is that they leave their bodies and start putting other people down. So have that kind of empathy for them and say, you're not getting to me today. You're not driving what I'm doing today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So you're Lebanese, and how has that, you being on social media and culturally, how has that affected you? I mean, because obviously, I mean, I know that the Lebanese culture has different standards and ways of living. So you being, how is that?
So again, so some people in Lebanon who live in different areas have had like much more open upbringings, where it's like they didn't have the cultural and religious constraints that I had growing up. But I grew up in a very conservative village. And so moving to Canada at 16 and my whole family had already been here. I had visited many times. Language wasn't a barrier, but everything else was a barrier. Like, you know, expectations of men versus women, boys versus girls, like how to dress, how to speak, how to raise your voice, how to not raise your voice, how to be a good girl, how to not be a good girl. Like, all of those things I learned from a very young age is you need to be a good girl. Yeah. You need to just always be kind, always be nice, always like just, you know, never be a burden, never really stand out. And that's what will make you stand out to people. And, you know, hopefully one day you'll get married to someone. Like, my parents did never, well, with the exceptions of a couple of times, but they never really pushed the idea that I needed to be married at a certain age. Maybe at certain points, there were certain people who they were like, this is a good guy, like you should give him a chance. But my parents thankfully never said, and to this day, they don't say like, what's wrong with you? You're not married. They never speak that way. So I was very lucky, but there was always the, you know, be a good girl, be a good girl. And now I'm just like, I was talking to my therapist a few weeks ago, and I said to her, no, I've always, like, when somebody calls a woman the B word, I've always seen that as such a negative. And I'm like, you know what? Like, sometimes I'm if speaking my mind makes me that, then so be it. And if, setting boundaries makes me that, then so be it. I don't care what you call me, but I'm sick and tired of like constantly feeling like I'm upheld to this, like, she's a good girl. What does that mean? Because to many people, being a good girl means you shut your mouth, you do what you're told, and you never ever show that you're hurt, or you don't make a sound. And then hopefully one day the people around you will be like, oh, like, you sacrificed yourself so much and you're this and you're that, and so you deserve whatever. And I'm like, I know what I deserve. I don't need to wait for the people around me who, after I sacrifice myself so much, to say, you deserve this. Like, I could do that for myself. And so again, that was a revolutionary part of my healing, and that happened recently. So I'm evolving as a person. Excuse me, I'm evolving as a person. You're evolving as a person. And so if there's one piece of advice I'll give you, because we were just talking about social media, is keep showing up as this evolving person that you are, instead of feeling like you have to stick to being a certain person to be liked, or to be seen as worthy of the like, or of the comment, or of the share. And also don't force yourself to veer away from things that you really want to talk about, but you think you're going to get hate for. Yeah. Like, stick to, what is it that I want to share right now? What is it that I think I should be sharing right now? What is it that I want to share right now? And trust me, like, brutal honesty really hits a chord with people. Yeah. And people can tell when you're trying to show yourself in a certain way, present yourself in a certain way, versus this is me truly being me.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of course.
So much reflection.
Yeah.
Okay. I have like one or two more questions for you.
Yeah.
What about, like, I know you've mentioned this a little bit ago, but just to hone in on, like, boundaries. Like, I feel like, for me, I think granted, this is another reason why I have not expressed that confrontation to the person, is because I feel like I feel like we all kind of can co-create things in a sense. And had I been more in my boundaries, and I'm not shaming myself for this, it's just a recognition, had I been more firm in my boundaries, what I got mad at would never have occurred. So, as you were saying, you may grow, you could, if you need to express or whatever, or if you can't give yourself that closure, then you could grow that resentment and stuff. And I don't feel like I have resentment, because I have taken ownership and I've taken the responsibility of, like, well, if I was not accepting this type of behavior, then this whole situation wouldn't have happened, and all of that. So, but, I feel like there are, outside of that situation, just other experiences that I've had where it's maybe the other person really isn't acknowledging their boundaries, and maybe they just don't know what that is. And so I feel like there's a difference between healthy boundaries and then the boundaries that come from a place of, like, hate and resentment and anger. So could you explain the difference of that and, like, how we can be better about setting and honoring those healthy boundaries?
Absolutely. So for me, boundaries are not about, like, other people. Like, if I do this, if I set this boundary, then I can maybe change that person's behavior towards me, or maybe I could change the way that they see me. It's more like, like I talk about building a home within, right? And welcome home. So if you have that home built within you, boundaries are like the fence that you have around that home. But it's not, the fence that you put up isn't necessarily to say, I am just protecting this house from any kind of danger or whatever. It's like, I see the value that's in this home. I see the value of keeping it safe from anything that threatens its, like, when you think about that inner home that you have the room of self-love and forgiveness and compassion. And just being good to yourself and clarity on your life and who you are. So the boundaries aren't just 100% to say, I'm protecting all of this from danger. The angle I hope a person would take is to say, I see the value and worth that I have within. And because of that, it's like having a diamond. What would you do with it? You want to keep it safe and clean and protected, but the focus isn't on the bad guys who are going to come and maybe steal that diamond or throw it on the ground or whatever. The focus is, this diamond is beautiful, it's valuable. So to me, boundaries are about seeing the worth that needs to be protected, as opposed to seeing the threat that's coming to take something away from you. So if, for example, let's say you and I are friends. I mean, we are friends now, but let's say you and I are the kinds of friends where, you know, there is just a lot of resentment between us. Like maybe I hurt you in some way over the years. Like I'm just the kind of person who always takes advantage of you, always, I don't know, you get me these really expensive gifts on my birthday and I barely even recognize, you know, that it's your birthday and let's make a big celebration or whatever. Like maybe let's say we have that kind of dynamic. I could at one point tell you, like, you know, I need to step away from our friendship because I see that you haven't over the years put the same kind of effort that I've put in. If my intention is to get you to be afraid that you're losing our friendship so that maybe you could try harder, then to me, that's not a healthy way to go about boundaries, because the intention isn't focused on, you know what, I deserve people in my life. I just switched the roles. Like you could tell me those things, but if you're thinking to yourself, like, I deserve people in my life who, you know, put the same kind of effort that I put in. I deserve people in my life who, when it's my birthday or when it's a big day to me of any sort, that they show up. And therefore, the people who aren't doing that, I do have to set a boundary where I don't give them the kind of access that I have been giving this person. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Like one type of boundary setting is heavily focused on changing the behavior of the other person. And the other one is heavily focused on, I finally see like the worthiness of my time, of my love, of my energy investment, of my thoughts, of my friendship, of my companionship. And so I will do whatever it takes to protect this value, this worth, as opposed to like, you know, I want that person to change their behavior. Therefore, I'm going to punish them in a way. And again, there's no judgment because we all learn over time. But anytime you think of setting a boundary because you want to change the other person's behavior, just, or you're punishing them in some way, or you're like this is going to get them to see my value, like come back to yourself and say, this is about me seeing my value. This is not about them. This is not about what they're thinking, what they're feeling. This is about me. So anytime that you are trying to set a boundary with someone, ask yourself, what's your intention?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love that. Would you say that those approaches are universal, meaning different relationship, like a friendship or a family member? You know, I know that I feel like with family, it can appear more difficult to create those boundaries because
absolutely,
mom, or it's my sister, like I have to show up for them. You know, there's more expectation maybe. So is it but do you believe that that's the same approach? Like we have to find the home within.
Absolutely. It is universal in my opinion. I know it's very controversial, but when people say, but it's family, I'm like, exactly. So the angle you're taking is it's family, right? So then I say, well, like, shouldn't they not put you in a position where you're this conflicted, like your family of all people? Like you also have to think of their role that they're playing. When you say it's family, it's hard. Is it hard? Absolutely. With family, it could be so much harder. And maybe a few years ago, I would have told you like boundaries with family are different. But again, as long as the focus is on, I see this value, I see this worth, and I will do whatever it takes to protect it, then it doesn't matter whether it's a family member or a friend or a colleague who's trying to hurt you in some way, or who's trying to overstep, or who's trying to disrespect. As long as the focus is on you seeing your value, then you will be able to respond appropriately. Sometimes with family, it's so much harder because we have those core fears of, what if they walk away? What if they don't see me the same way anymore? What if, because that's scary with family, right? So when you build that really strong sense of, I know who I am, and I know who I am, regardless of what happened to me, like I can be myself, a whole person without the attachments I had to my childhood, to my parents, to my brothers, to my sisters. When you can stand on your own and see that you can do it on your own, then you're not so afraid of setting those boundaries. And also, like I said, you always have to think it is a two-way street. Like many times we think with family, it is 100% my responsibility to keep that relationship. I know if I set this boundary, then there is no way they will accept it. And it's like, you think that setting this boundary means that you're making the decision to end the relationship because you know they might end the relationship as a result of you setting this boundary. And it's like, no, you are making the decision to set this boundary based on what you need for yourself. That's 50% of the equation. The other 50% is their reaction, their decision to cut that contact off. And so you have to also see that it's a two-way street. It's not just all on you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I agree. I feel the same way.
Good. We're on
Totally
the same
agree.
page. Yes.
Oh, I love that. Well, to wrap up, one more question for you. I know that you obviously had mentioned like breath work and somatic healing and somatic experiencing therapy and that type of thing. I know because I've looked into these things, some of it, it's not covered by insurance here in the United States. And, there's different, I feel like those types of modalities are so needed and should be more mainstream and accessible and things like that. I mean, obviously, yes, breath work. I mean, I could sit on my couch and do it by myself, but I understand because I've done breath work. It is extremely powerful. I do it under a facilitator who is, breath work certified. And because trauma does surface and it's hard. It can be scary to like go into those places. So for those listening that, may not be able to, afford it, it's not in their budget. What are maybe some ways that they could tap into certain things without having, a therapist or facilitator, someone who is specializing in those things, facilitate those modalities for them?
I would highly recommend searching somatic healing on Spotify, on YouTube. There's so much.
Okay.
Specifically, I would search Dr. Peter Levine. He talks, and his book, it's called Waking the Tiger, I believe. Yes, because I read that. And I know it's not that big of an investment money-wise. I mean, for some people it might be, but you can also get it on Kindle, and I'm pretty sure it's so much cheaper on Kindle. When you read it, it teaches you about how really your body has all the resources it needs to heal. You just need to listen to it, and it guides you through different exercises. Like, yes, not all of us have the luxury of being able to speak to a therapist. Not all of us have the luxury of being able to have somebody coach us through things. But the beautiful thing is your body knows what it needs. All you need to do is to listen to it and to start trusting it. So I would definitely look those things up, and it's going to lead you to the right places. Ask all the questions that you are looking for. Like, there's so much free content out there. If something crosses your mind, like, how do I heal from, I don't know, an abusive parent? How do I release those responses from my body? You will find thousands, if not millions, of hits on Google where you'll have those resources. Ask questions, be curious, look up certain things in detail, find communities online, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, wherever it is where people talk about these things and bond with them over that, because there's something so empowering about knowing that someone or someone's or thousands or hundreds of thousands, millions have gone through the exact same thing that you are currently going through. There's something about that that's just universally healing. So that's my advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find you? And
I'm all on probably all social media platforms, all the big ones: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. It's all the same handle, at Najwa Zebian, Najwa Zebian. Also, another guide that you could read for free that I mentioned earlier in the interview is Trust Your Heart, Lead Your Journey to Self-Discovery from Within. You could read it and listen to it in my voice on script. It's the first link in my bio. So that's like the newest thing that I have out. And very soon I have an audiobook original on letting go that's coming out. So that's gonna be, it's just audio, so you won't be able to get it on in paperback, but that one, it's I just know it's gonna help so many people. So just watch out for, I know this interview is coming out in like a couple of weeks, or maybe 3 weeks, but that'll be very close to the time. So yeah.
I'll definitely include that in the notes, all your stuff.
We'll send you everything. Yeah. Thank you.
So amazing. Thank you so much I'm excited. I was going to say just on the somatic stuff. I know that stuff is more, I've done certain things, like I've done some breath work, I've done a little somatic and everything, but like, I feel like that's something I want to focus more on. Cause I feel like what you're saying about the logic in the body, like, I feel like I'm like, I know, but I need to continue tapping in to the body.
Absolutely. You do. And if you have that urge, then that means you do need it even more. Yeah. So I highly recommend, there's a page on Instagram. I'll send it to you afterwards. I believe it's called Somatic Experiencing.
Okay.
If you look it up, I follow them, so you'll know. And they have videos saying, like, if you normally fall into this trauma response, try these exercises. If you are going through this, try it. And the person in the video will actually show you. So cool. Highly recommend to anybody listening. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Honor and a pleasure. And thank you for
same here.
At the beginning.
It's okay. It brought us closer.
It did. Well, thank you so much. If you loved this episode, please download, share, rate, and review. If you are ready to step into that next level version of you and grow your business and bank account, it's time to unleash your goddess magic and chase life with Kelly. You can start this epic expansion journey by diving into the Goddess Magic course bundle found at chaselifetogether.com. Please connect with me on Instagram at chaselifewithkelly. Join the Chase Life with Kelly Facebook community and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Till next time, create the life you crave, babe, and chase life with Kelly.